Hi guys, how are you? Welcome to this video where I'm going to be talking to you about everything core training. So for those of you who don't know, my name's James. I am an S&C coach, been an S&C coach for 13 years now, working with athletes and parents within my business called Evans Performance Training, where I run the Athletic Parent Project, helping parents who don't necessarily want to be bodybuilding aesthetic type programs. They want to look, feel and move athletically. So today I'm going to be talking you through the Athletic Parent Code, so how I program core training for parents, because it is a super underutilized area within a lot of training programs. It's very limited in how people look at the core, so we're going to go quickly through today a few of those issues, and then I'll tell you how I train the core and give you some examples of some exercises, as well as how you can fit it into your programs. So let's start with the problem, or one of the problems. The problem is this: how do we define the core? Everyone sort of says, well, I've got a strong core, you've got to get a stronger core. And particularly for parents, it's something that is really important, because carrying a kid around all day, playing with your kids, then going and sitting at work, coming home, doing the same thing again, you can start suffering from lower back pains, conditions like that. Having a strong core is really important for overcoming those types of issues. But part of the problem is, and it comes from this sort of bodybuilding aesthetic type thing. If I was to ask you to define the core, or what this is, you'd probably say it's abs or a six-pack. This is a very limited way of viewing the core, and it restricts how we can train it. If I was to then tell you that actually the core is a 360-degree muscle group, you might say, well, what the fuck does that mean? But I would say what it means is we need to consider the fact that it is not just the abs. We've also got our lateral core muscles. We've got our lower back as well. The core is a 360-degree muscle group. So we have our abdominals, or our rectus abdominis as they're correctly called. We have our transverse abdominal, which are our deeper abdominal muscles. We have our obliques and our diaphragm on the side. We have our erector spinae. Yes, I did say erector. In our lower back, that's responsible for back extension. Our pelvic floor is going to be key to our core strength as well, particularly for women who have had babies. And then also you've got a nice muscle called the quadratus lumborum, or the QL, really important for stabilizing the pelvis when we're running and walking, attaches to our spine, also part of the core. There are a lot more muscle groups, I won't sit here and name them all, but what we have to get out of is this mentality that our abs are our core. Okay, they are part of the core, but they are not the full core. And so we have to start looking at this as the way of defining the core, so that we can then learn how to train it properly. That presents the next problem, because what a lot of people do to train the core is they'll do static holds like a plank, and they'll seem to think that doing these for minutes on end, like 3 to 4 minutes, sometimes even longer, is the way to train the core. For me, if you can do a plank for 90 seconds with your body weight, wax and load on it. If you can then do a loaded plank for 60 to 90 seconds, there's no need to do planks anymore. You need to move on to something more advanced. Just holding a plank for longer and longer is just getting better at doing planks. It's not helping you train your core and I don't like this word, but I will use it in this sense. It's not helping you train your core in a particularly functional way, okay? We also then have sit-ups, or sort of our body weight exercises. And what people seem to do is think that we should train these for high repetitions. But this, again, poses a problem. We wouldn't train any other muscle group in this way. Yes, the core has a lot of value in how it holds our posture and sort of the static hold type movement. But we wouldn't train, if you wanted to get stronger legs, you wouldn't just go and do body weight squats for tons and tons of reps. You'd get a barbell on your back, or you'd go on a hack squat machine or a leg press, and you'd apply load. But when it comes to core, we just want to train body weight and high repetitions, which doesn't make sense. And I work at the University of Worcester. I work with a guy called Mark Scriven. He's a very inspiring man. He's done a lot of things in life. And one thing he did was he broke the world record for the number of sit-ups done in 24 hours. And we've spoken a lot about how he trained to do this. What he did occasionally would do some efforts where he'd do high reps of sit-ups. But this was not the main part of his training. What he did was he did very advanced exercises that he could load up efficiently. And two of his staples were a Zercher squat. Oops, sorry, my bad writing and bad spelling. Hopefully you can make that out. Do a Zercher squat. Why? Because we'll come on a little bit more later why compound lifting can help strengthen the core. But a Zercher squat allows you to load up heavy on the anterior, so the front of the body, and it works the core extremely well. Another exercise he did, this is called a candlestick. Very advanced core exercise. Some people call it a dragon flag, quite popular in calisthenic type work. And a little bit of a contradiction because it is a bodyweight exercise, but it's a very advanced bodyweight exercise. To hold this angle all the way down to the bench and then come all the way back up to your vertical, you've got to have a really fucking strong core to do that. These were two really good exercises that he would do. Why? Because they allowed him to overload the muscles of the core to produce very high amounts of force. That meant the sit-up then was virtually nothing to his core. It was very, very easy. Obviously, like I said, he would do efforts of high rep sit-ups. You need to build up strength endurance if you're going to do a record like that. But we're not talking about breaking world records. We're talking about trying to get the core as strong as possible to support our lifestyle. It might be to play sport, but also to reduce lower back pain. So we want to get away from that strength endurance type training of doing loads and loads of sit-ups and go more into trying to overload it the way we would any other muscle. In order to do that, we just need to quickly go through the movements that our core is responsible for. So we have extension and flexion of the spine. We have rotation. We have lateral flexion and extension. And then we have the anti of these movements, so resisting these types of movements. So we might have anti-lateral flexion and extension, anti-rotation, anti-extension and flexion. And when we say all that, you realise that actually that's why we can't just look at it as being our abs. We have to look at it in a different way, and we have to train it in a different way. The way I like to train with my clients or athletes within the Athletic Parent Project, my favourite split for parents is 3 full body sessions. Full body sessions are a very efficient way of training. If you're a parent, you've got limited time to go in the gym, so 3 full body sessions is a really good way of doing this. You hit every muscle group, every movement you need to within those 3 sessions. It can be 2, so it can be a little bit less, but 3 is good. We will have 1 low level core exercise, which could come earlier in the session if we need it to, in order to increase core activation. Watch your compound lifts fly if you do this. And then we will also have 1 advanced exercise. Advanced being relative to that individual. We'll pick an exercise of that individual and where they are at. And what we will do is we will either pick 2 to 3 exercises across that program that might train 2 or 3 of these movements, or we'll try and dot each one of these movements throughout the sessions. There are a couple of caveats to this. For some of these movements, your compound lifts will hit these types of movements. So anti-flexion, for example, if you're doing heavy back squats, that's going to be covered there. For spinal extension, for example, as well, if you're doing something like a hip hinge, like an RDL, then that's going to get this movement as well. It's going to work the erector spinae. Some people say if you do compound lifts, you don't need to do core work. I say we've only got 2 of the movements in there, so we do need to do some other stuff as well. So let's just go through a few examples. Let's take rotation. Landmine rotations are one of my favourite core exercises. You can apply load, you can get it in that 6 to 8 rep range each side, get a good amount of weight on it. It gets your spine mobile as well as strengthening your core. For extension, like I said, we've got our RDLs. For flexion, sit-ups might not be enough, but we can do something like a cable crunch to apply more load onto that movement. For lateral flexion extension, we've got side bends, either with a dumbbell or with a barbell. Do it on a Smith machine, get more load on there. A dumbbell isn't enough. For anti-extension and flexion, we've got exercises like dead bugs. Planks falls into this, but obviously, like we said, that's quite a low level. But my favourite are barbell rollouts, or better yet, barbell rollouts on your toes. Very advanced form of exercise for this type of movement, something to work up towards, but a really good exercise if you can get there. You can also then, for anti-lateral movements, got an excellent exercise called a suitcase carry, which is really going to work that QL muscle that I spoke about earlier. Better yet, do what I call a QL walk, where you've got a suitcase carry and a dumbbell overhead as well. Some of these exercises might look quite advanced. I would put candlesticks in anti-extension and flexion as well. They might look very advanced, but I've genuinely got normal everyday parents up to doing these types of exercises because I believe that they are excellent bang for your buck. I want you to think about this phrase. It won't mean anything to you if you don't know the anatomical terms, but I'll explain it. Proximal stability equals distal mobility. And what this means is, with greater stability and strength in our core, the more efficient, stronger and effective our movements at our extremities will be. The core is where a lot of movement comes from. It has to stabilize effectively, it has to produce movement. It's often the center of our movement, and therefore it makes sense to strengthen it and train it like every other muscle group. I hope this video was useful for you. Please make sure you hit subscribe. If you want to follow me on my other social channels, the links are in the description for this video. If you're interested in what we do on the Athletic Parent Project, head to my Instagram or my email. Just send me the word parent and I'll send you over all the details.